How's it going, guys? I am Fokker, your local brick built historian, with another episode of Brick Built History. Today we are taking a look at one of the aircraft that I made my channel name after, the Fokker E3 Eindecker. So let's take a look at the Brickmania kit here, and then get into the incredible history of this aircraft. Now, I bought this from eBay. So it is not 100% original Brickmania, but most of it is. So I'm still going to do a review of it. Just take note that it is not full Brickmania, because the person who I bought it from did make some modifications, which it's fine, but let's take a look. So on the box here, you have the Brickmania logo. It is kit 493. You have the Imperial Germany flag here, skill 3 out of 5. Contains 257 Lego and brick arm elements and a World War I German pilot. Fokker E3 Eindecker, World War I German fighter aircraft, an original design by John Canepa. And you have the 3/4 profile shot with the German pilot right there. No manufacturing plate. It just has the name there again. And then I've never seen this before, but it's like a long view of the same picture. Then you have the pilot again, spinning propeller, posable rear flaps, and all the everything that's included. So let's move this off to the side and take a look at the aircraft. Now, the Fokker is a very interesting aircraft, to say the least. One of the things you might notice is all these strings here, which I'll get to in the history part. But starting off, the very first thing we'll notice is the person I bought this from. They changed the propellers to this like wood plank. The like Lego wood plank printed tile. The original had just pure brown. You have the nice brick built cowling here with the engine pistons showing off the bottom. The landing gear here, which the Eindecker has a weird set of landing gear where it's got like this bar in the back and all that. You have this cool, like, the wing is not like level, it is like bent up a little bit. You have the machine gun there, the top part of the strings where they go through. The person replaced the hair of the pilot with a pilot helmet. Then you have the stickers of the Fokker E3 439 1B. You have the Maltese crosses, and then you have a nice brick built rudder with elevators. So it's a nice small little build that I like. Not really I don't really have a lot of John Canepa designs. I did just buy the Newport 11 to go along with this, so hopefully I can do a more in-depth look of World War I aircraft. But yeah, for now, the Eindecker is a fun beginning. So let's get into the history. So the E3 Eindecker is the it's the second to last of the Eindecker family, starting with the E1, the E2, and then ending with the E4. The name Eindecker literally means monoplane in German, and the E is the designation that the Germans would use in World War I. you'd use E for Eindecker, D for Doppeldecker, which is like double wing for their biplane fighters. And then you use DR for Dreidecker for tri-wings or triplanes. So monoplanes were not really used too often in World War One, mostly due to the power to weight ratio and the amount, like the speed needed to gain lift. So these things could only go like 87 miles per hour. So you need more surface area to have better lift to make it fly. But if you have long wings going out for a monoplane, it's not going to be very maneuverable, so they put two wings on top of each other to make it so that you have more lift, so that you can still be maneuverable and still have good lift characteristics to fly and all that. But the Eindecker, it is small. If you the fuselage is just tiny, like going down to here at the end. It is a very, very small aircraft compared to other World War One fighters, and it's just a weird aircraft. One of the other things is like these strings on the wing here. They provide structural support. You have strings on the top and strings on the bottom to give it like more structural support going out. But not only that, but this is what's called a wing warper design. Basically what a wing warper is that this thing doesn't have flaps on the wings or ailerons. It literally, these strings will pull the wing to warp it. So if he wants to bank right, these strings would pull this wing up, and these strings would pull this wing down, and it'll literally warp the wing to turn it. There's a reason it's not used anymore, because the structural stability of the wing is severely compromised, and these wings will more than likely break after a few years. And like now it's illegal to fly in most countries. I went to a museum in Pungo, Virginia, and they had an Eindecker that was a reproduction, and they had to put ailerons on it because it was illegal to fly without the ailerons. It was illegal to fly a wing warper, so they had to compromise and put ailerons on it. But the original design was a wing warper design, which today you think, oh, they're literally bending a wing to turn the aircraft? That doesn't sound very safe, and well, it really wasn't, which is why we don't do it anymore. So the aircraft was originally designed by Morten Kreutzer in the 1913, 1914. It's based on the Fokker A3 Scout, which is kind of similar to this, but it was unarmed, which the Fokker A3 Scout was based on the Marine Saulnier H shoulder wing. One thing you'll like, if you ever look into Fokker and like Anthony Fokker, one thing he does a lot is basically steal designs from other companies. So the Fokker Eindecker is basically stolen from the Marine Saulnier. The Fokker DR1 is basically the Sopwith triplane copied. He is not one to shy away from stealing other people's designs and taking credit for people's work. Like he took the credit for the DR1 from Reinhard Platz. So if you look into the history of Anthony Fokker, he's I believe we call him snake oil salesman, and he was very, very egotistical, very much into taking the credit for things. But despite that, the biggest innovation of this aircraft is something you can't see here. It's in here. It's called the Fokker synchronization gear. Now, the synchronization gear has been a concept before the war by a Swiss or a Swedish, one of the two, but a Swiss or Swedish inventor who thought about using a mechanical system to interrupt a gun from firing through the propeller. And people really didn't think of it as being viable at the time, so they didn't really pay it any mind because they didn't believe that aircraft could be used in a military sense. But whenever the war broke out in 1914, they started using planes for recon and all that. And then they eventually figured out, well, if there's other planes up there, instead of just staring at them, we could shoot at them. So they started using revolvers and rifles, just trying to take pot shots at the enemy aircraft to figure out if they could try to prevent the enemy from bringing vital information to their lines. So whenever they've started doing that, they decided, well, we have these machine guns, why don't we put those on? So they started putting machine guns on. But the biggest problem was the fact that the best way to aim a machine gun was have it right in front of you. If you have it right in front of you, you got this propeller in the way. And there's a big chance, because this propeller is spinning a couple hundred or a couple thousand revolutions per minute, your gun shoots at around 500 rounds per minute, so there's going to be some overlap where your gun will hit your propeller. So a man by the name of Roland Garros, who was a French, he was a French aviator. He did French races whenever in France, like plane racing was a big thing. He was also a tennis ace, which is why there's a place in, I believe it's a tennis tournament called the Garros, like the Roland Garros Invitational or something. But he was a French pilot, and he's also where the term ace comes from. But anyway, what he did was he put metal wedges on his propeller so that whenever the bullet would shoot and hit the propeller, these metal wedges would deflect it off to the side. Although there was still the chance that if you hit it right at the perfect angle, it will deflect back at you. Nonetheless, he was able to shoot down 3 aircraft before he was flying, and he had engine trouble. Was able to land it, but before he could burn his aircraft to prevent the Germans from seeing what he did, he was captured, and the Germans gave his aircraft to Anthony Fokker, because at the time Fokker was basically the darling of German aviation, and they told him basically do something with this. And as the story goes, in 48 hours he came up with the synchronization gear. So the synchronization gear, the basics of it is you have a mechanically connected gear to the propeller. This gear would have basically two like nodes on it that are in conjunction with the propeller, and your gun has a disconnect, a solenoid disconnect to disconnect it from the trigger, so that whenever the propeller goes here, the node will hit the disconnect and it will remove the solenoid from the trigger, so that the gun will stop firing, and then it will continue to fire after the propeller moved. This would reduce the fire rate from around 650 to 500 rounds per minute, but it's not really that big of a deal since you only have a couple hundred rounds anyway, and you're only shooting a couple second bursts. But it really made it so that the German pilots had a huge advantage over the Allies, because they could look straight through in front of them, shoot their machine gun right through the propeller without any worries. This would be known as the Fokker Scourge. So in 1915, the Germans would shoot down hundreds of Allied aircraft. And there's only 416 of these built. And they were shooting down a lot of Allied aircraft because they had this advantage. Now, the Newport 11, the French counterpart, has the wing mounted on top. Now, the Newport 11 was faster and more maneuverable, but that top-mounted machine gun was really difficult to use because you're aiming it like a couple of feet above you instead of aiming it right in front of you. So your aim is going to be off. Not only that, but this guy, he has a couple hundred rounds automatically feeding into his gun. The Newport 11 with a Lewis machine gun on the top, every 96 rounds, you have to bring it down, replace the drum, put it back up, which is a pain. So the Fokker Eindecker really proved to be a phenomenal aircraft for its time. The German Air Force, the Imperial Air Force, started having a couple of guys truly show their potential, including someone named Oswald Bohlke. Oswald Bohlke was the ace of the aces in the beginning. He would come up with the Ditka Bohlke, which is still used today, which is basically the 10 commandments of dogfighting. Never leave your wingman, never chase a downed enemy, always attack with your son to the back. All those, which are still applicable today. And Oswald Bohlke would fly an Eindecker in the beginning. Unfortunately, he would eventually die in a crash with one of his wingmen who took his words a little too seriously, and while he's flying, he and a wingman would crash and Bohlke would die. Another person would be Max Immelmann. Max Immelmann, who created what would be known as the Immelmann move. Whenever you go up, and as you're up, you would go like that. So you basically go up and turn. The Immelmann move would be still used in modern warfare. Unfortunately, he would die in a crash as well. Although I think it was a landing attempt, and he was trying to land, and his gear got caught, and over and he goes. So a lot of German aces would start in their Eindeckers and prove to really push forward in the fighter capabilities. The whole thing of creating the Ditka Bohlke, really pushing the Allies to try to come up with solutions to face this thing. They came out with the de Havilland DH-2, where they put the propeller in the back so that they could shoot in front of them. But that thing was weird. It had weird characteristics. The maneuverability was weird. It was just it was a good aircraft, but by the time it came out, the Germans moved on from the Fokker Eindecker to the Albatros D3 and the Faust D3. And at that time, the British and the French finally shot down an Eindecker in their own territory because Germany was really protective of these things. They thought this was the greatest thing in the German Air Force. So these things would stay in their side of the lines for most of its career in the German Air Force during World War One. It wasn't until they shot down one of these, and then a pilot got lost in 1916 and ended up in British territory, and the Brits would capture it and send it back to England, which, by the way, is the only surviving original Eindecker in the world right now. It's in the London Science Museum in London, England, and it's the only one of these that is the original Eindecker, which is crazy. It's over 100. It's a 105-year-old aircraft, and it's still around today. But in the end, the Eindecker would, I mean, it's kind of lost to history now because of the fact that you have planes like the DR-1, which is what the Red Baron would fly, and it's what he's the most well known for flying. But you know, this was an innovation. It caused a whole scourge, the Fokker scourge. Like, this thing really is the epitome of what would be moving forward, what would still be to come when it comes to fighter aircraft. And the fact that it's kind of forgotten now is kind of a shame, because this was an innovation. This was a pioneer of aircraft, and I think it really should be respected more. But, you know, in the end, it's just another aircraft for me to do history on. So, with that said, if you liked the video, hit a like. Comment what you want me to do video on, because, you know, I have a lot of different planes and tanks and stuff, so there's a lot of history to do. But if you want to see me do something specific, go ahead and put it in the comments. I mean, in my haul videos, you see what I have. If you see something and you go, oh, that looks cool, go ahead and tell me to do it. It might be a little bit of time before I do so, but, you know, I take suggestions. So, you know, it is a very open schedule that I have. But if you do that, make sure you subscribe so you can see whenever the video that you want to see comes out. And go ahead and show anyone who you think would be interested in this stuff. But with that said, I have been Fokker Man, and let's continue to build history.